Well, hello, and hopefully welcome back. My name is Sean Smith. I'm with the Learning Research Network, or the LRN, and this is one of several videos in a series trying to help our Catholic educators think about planning and designing for all our learners when it comes to meeting the needs of, yes, students with disabilities, but also struggling learners, those individuals with anxiety, those individuals with executive function limitations, and pretty much the learner variability that we're faced in today's Catholic schools. And in so doing, planning and designing requires not necessarily a huge lift, just a different perspective. In our previous videos, we've kind of walked you through learning variability, the barriers associated with learning variability, and the need to plan and using something like the Universal Design for Learning Framework, or UDL, as a means to that end. So this session, what I want to focus in on is I want to focus in on the basic concepts of those three principles, but globally the framework. And in so doing, yes, many of us think of UDL, and we know, oh, sure, Sean, that's multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action expression. And I was just with a bunch of Catholic educators earlier this week, and we started talking about Universal Design for Learning, and a couple of things popped up. First of all, many of the educators said, well, I'm doing UDL. And it was kind of funny. It's like, so how do you do something? Maybe they're implementing something. They're implementing the framework. That's awesome. But in terms of doing it, it's more, well, how do you implement elements of the framework? And I want to talk a little bit about that in this session. Another that one of the educators says, Universal Design for Learning is a series of options, or giving student choice, right, Sean? And that's true to a degree. There's definitely offering options and choice to students. And then what took place next was, well, wait a minute here. That seems not particularly fair. And he started, or he and she, and there's a group of them, started talking about the fact that, well, what if we offer 3 or 4 choices and they always all select the easier choice? Or what if we allow ability to demonstrate what they know, or action expression, and they only do something that's non-writing and whatever it may be, that's not really helping with them developing further skills? And as we unpacked this aspect, is that we've tried to reinforce the fact that Universal Design for Learning is not the students select one option and run with that entirely, or I want this choice and this is my choice consistently across all the assignments. As educators, we're the ones that are the experts. We're the ones that are designing based on the standards we have, the curriculum we're trying to align, the pedagogy we're trying to instill. All those elements are critical and essential into the implementation of our good instruction, but also the framework. So let's break down the framework just a bit to make us appreciate and understand the fact that it's just not a series of choice and options for individuals, but something much more thorough in how we see the world and how the framework provides us a pathway. So let's start with the first fact that, one, there are 3 principles. Each of them have 3 guidelines. So for example, we have multiple means engagement. And if you can't see it, by the way, in this visual, feel free to look at the resources below, and there's a direct link to CAST, and on CAST's website, they have this in much greater detail. But under the multiple means of engagement, we have option 1, or guideline 1, options the wrong word, guideline 1 is provide options for recruitment interest. Now this then is built upon the fact that, well, if we can provide options for recruiting interest, the next guideline to build upon would be then we provide options to sustain this interest, this effort for persistence. And then finally, with the right types of supports, the individuals are able to provide options, so we provide options for self-regulation to a level of monitoring, etc. You look at this at multiple means of representation the same way. First, we provide options for perception. Then we further integrate with language and symbols, which often offer barriers to our learners. And finally, we want it to not only access, but to a level of comprehension. And of course, finally, we have the same with the physical action, let's say, of writing under multiple means of action expression, to provide other options for expression and communication to convey what we know, and finally provide options for executive functions, which is necessary in terms of our brainstorming, organizing, sequencing, and all that we want to share in terms of our understanding of a specific area. Now I want to further break this down with something Stephanie Craig, a faculty member in Ohio, she's illustrated through bicycles. And that is this first bicycle. If you see it can go horizontal and vertical. So let's go horizontal for a moment. So we have the 3 principles, but each of the 3 principles begins with a guideline that's really about access. And well, let's use multiple means of engagement as an example here. So if we think about multiple means of engagement, the first guideline is we as educators are recruiting interest, or we as parents are recruiting interest for the child. So in that instance, we're the one on the bicycle pedaling and navigating and deciding direction. And our students are sitting there and they're along for the ride. Now that's good, that's fine. But one caution there, folks, is some of the data out there indicates the fact that we're probably, as educators, spending 60% or more of our educational day where we're recruiting interest and the students are just there for the ride. I think there's limitations there for us to consider, but we'll get that to another day. The next component is, as we go down in terms of, yes, on the vertical, but then let's go horizontal, is that not only do we want to provide access, I mean, recruiting interest in August, we should be doing something different by the time the students are in the same class with us in January or February. Hopefully, we're building upon their ability to sustain effort and persistence on what we've now established in terms of this level of interest. And in this instance, the bicycle has the learner pedaling with us giving guidance, us being those wheels to provide the support. And in so doing, the individual now is, instead of us or them dependent upon us to recruit their interest, they're able to sustain that through, it could be an introduction to a variety of strategies. It could be an introduction to some materials that we offer. And I'll get to that in a subsequent presentation. And then finally, this effort is leading to them on a 10 speed. So not only are they independent and they're making directions, but they're doing it very effectively and very efficiently. In that instance, it might be the fact that we're providing them strategies for self-regulation. It might be the fact that we're now providing those strategies where they are doing those independently. So the framework has so much more than the 3 principles. Now this visual tries to break things down and illustrate the fact that not only the 3 principles and of course the 3 guidelines associated with each of the principles, 9 total guidelines, but each guideline has a series of checkpoints. And those checkpoints are ways to facilitate and operationalize the way that we can bring things to life. So for example, in multiple means of representation, under providing options for perception, checkpoints offer ways of customizing the display of the information. And that could be very well on a device, a computer, iPad, Chromebook. Offer alternatives for auditory information. Oh my goodness. So that text-to-speech now reads out loud. It highlights the text. I can listen to it. It might be I can change rate of speed. I can change volume. I can change the size of the font as well, down to the visual information. So visuals could be not only the change of the font size, color, etc., but it also could be replacing the text with visuals. Maybe the visual representation for a host of things. So that's a conversation for another day, but just an example of breaking it down. And in so doing, the barriers we're addressing, for example, is we're giving individuals yes choice and yes options, but multiple ways for them to respond. In addition, we're giving them the ability to develop more self-regulation, and we're giving them supports for that self-regulation, which is often a barrier for our students with executive function challenges, attention challenges, and actually, I would argue, under a lot of the learning issues. We also are giving them options. We started with options, we're going to continue with options, and that will be across the principles and across the guidelines associated with the principles. We're going to also help them by synthesizing information or providing them tools or ways to synthesize the information to be more efficient in their learning, to understand what the main idea is, particularly for individuals that have that challenge due to reading limitations, problems with text, whatever it may be. We're also going to activate background knowledge. And background knowledge, we're giving that foundation. We're anchoring our instruction on what they already know, and then we're going to enhance it by making connections. And those connections can be done a variety of different ways through the framework. And finally, we're going to make certain, as I mentioned earlier, text is provided in multiple formats, in multiple ways. So that's a critical element. So let's take a break here, and we're leaving here thinking about the fact that the 3 principles of the framework that many of us know have a lot more than just simply the three principles. They have guidelines associated with it. They have checkpoints associated with the guidelines, but they're also developed in a manner that are very sequential. They're developed from a stepping up approach in a way, a stepping stones approach that gives individuals a very purposeful way of getting to the outcomes that we're trying to facilitate for all learners. The next section is going to break down the framework even further to think of us and how to implement the framework and how to bring this to life in our classroom. Again, this is Sean Smith with the Learning Research Network, or the LRN. Thanks for being with us, and have a great rest of the day.